Some women don't chase, and yet, they are never forgotten. Their absence lingers more than another's devotion. Their silence speaks louder than pleading words, and their stillness unsettles men who are accustomed to being pursued, admired, obeyed. These women move differently in the world, not hurried, not desperate, not tethered to the outcome of another's desire. And it is precisely this refusal to cling that makes them unforgettable. A man may dismiss her at first, convinced she is ordinary, replaceable, easy to turn away from. He wears his confidence like a weapon, believing his ego can dictate who is seen and who is discarded. But the truth is harsher, deeper, stranger. The more he denies her, the more she lives inside him. Not because of anything she does, but because of what she does not. She does not beg. She does not break. She does not lose herself in his shifting moods. Instead, she waits with silence, not for him, but for herself. That silence unsettles him, though he will never admit it. Carl Jung wrote that what is repressed does not disappear, it returns in shadows, in dreams, in obsessions we cannot explain. And so, when she chooses silence, she becomes the figure in his unconscious. She slips into the role of the anima, the feminine soul image every man carries within. He cannot destroy her by neglecting her, because she now exists inside the chambers of his psyche, haunting him not as flesh and blood but as symbol and archetype. This is why her detachment has such weight. She does not punish him, she simply mirrors his inner fracture. The wound he hides behind his ego is forced to surface when he meets a woman who cannot be conquered by attention games. Her absence speaks directly to his shadow, the part of himself that fears being unworthy, unlovable, unseen. And so, without raising her voice, she becomes unforgettable. Some women are remembered not because they gave too much, but because they withheld what was never theirs to give, their power, their essence, their dignity. They remind men that desire is not control, that attention is not possession, and that love cannot be commanded by the ego. These women haunt because they reveal truth, that the wound beneath his armor is older than her, deeper than her, and it will not heal by forcing her return. It is the paradox of feminine power. The less she gives away, the more of her remains with him. She does not dissolve into his chaos, and so she lingers like a phantom he cannot silence. Some women don't chase. Some women don't plead. They simply exist as mystery, as mirror, as silence, and because of that, they are never forgotten. She is not simply a woman. She is an archetype. She carries within her the power that men both crave and fear, the reflection of their anima, the key to their unconscious longing. She does not enter his life to be possessed. She arrives as a mirror, as a storm, as a reminder of the truths he spends his life burying beneath his ego. In the beginning, he sees her as any other. Perhaps beautiful, perhaps alluring, but not dangerous. He tells himself she is ordinary, that she can be won with effort, lost with indifference, replaced with ease. This is the story his ego whispers, that she is no different from the rest, that his control defines her value. But soon, something shifts. Her presence unsettles him, because she does not respond the way he expects. She is not seduced by his arrogance, not shaken by his coldness, not bound to the rhythm of his attention. She is, in Jungian terms, a projection trigger, a woman who awakens the forgotten parts of his own psyche. He feels both drawn and threatened. In her silence, he feels invisible. In her gaze, he feels exposed. She has not wounded him directly, yet his pride trembles around her, because through her, he encounters himself. Every rejection he buried, every fear of inadequacy, every boyhood wound left untended, all rise to the surface in her presence. And so, his ego swells, trying to protect him from the storm she unknowingly brings. He calls her difficult. He calls her cold. He calls her unattainable. Yet these are not truths about her, they are projections of his shadow. What he cannot face within himself, he paints upon her image. His fear of weakness becomes her cruelty. His fear of insignificance becomes her indifference. His fear of dependence becomes her danger. She becomes the vessel of his unhealed wounds, not because she chose it, but because he cannot carry them alone. And she feels it. Not in words, but in energy, in atmosphere. His ego may mock her, dismiss her, even rage against her, but underneath the noise she senses the wound. The wound of the little boy inside him who was never enough, who was unseen, who was made to wear strength like armor. That boy still lives in him, buried beneath arrogance and silence, trembling whenever love dares to get close. Here is the paradox: he wants her, yet he resents her. He desires her, yet he fears the mirror she holds. Because to truly love her would mean to face himself, to strip away the armor, to touch the wound he has hidden behind his ego for years. And this is the choice he cannot bear. Better to keep her at arm's length, to diminish her with words, to pretend she does not matter. Yet the more he resists, the more he becomes bound to her, because she has awakened what he cannot kill, the shadow within. She is not ordinary. She is not replaceable. She is the archetypal woman who forces him to face himself, and that is why he both craves and fears her presence. There is always a moment when the surface begins to crack. He cannot hide forever behind his practiced confidence, behind his charm, behind the subtle dismissals that once kept women tethered to his orbit. Something about her presence unsettles the game. The rules he depended on no longer bend reality in his favor, and slowly, tension builds like a storm just beyond the horizon. At first, he resists quietly. He tests her with silence, expecting her to bend. But she does not chase. He offers crumbs of affection, expecting her to feast. But she does not hunger. With every attempt to assert control, he discovers only emptiness. She does not respond the way others have. She refuses to become a character in the drama of his ego. And so, he turns sharper. His compliments shift into criticisms, his warmth into withdrawal, his presence into calculated absence. Yet instead of weakening, she grows luminous. Her self-possession reveals his lack. Her calm exposes his chaos. The first turning point is denial. He convinces himself she does not matter. He buries her under distractions, loses himself in work, in other women, in anything that will silence the image of her. But repression does not erase, it multiplies. In dreams, she returns. In quiet moments, her absence throbs like a bruise. His denial fuels his obsession. What he cannot have, he cannot release. The second turning point is projection. Unable to face the wound inside, he casts it outward. She becomes, in his eyes, cold, arrogant, selfish. He sees her dignity as cruelty, her silence as manipulation, her distance as rejection. Yet every judgment he hurls at her is only the echo of what he refuses to admit about himself. He is cold. He is terrified of rejection. He is enslaved by the need for validation. His accusations are mirrors, and though he cannot see it, she can. The third turning point is despair. When he realizes he cannot erase her, cannot control her, cannot bend her, something deeper breaks. Beneath his anger, beneath his pride, lies the raw wound of insignificance, the wound Jung described as the shadow, the hidden truth the ego fears most. She has not created this pain, she has only revealed it. He feels it as abandonment, as betrayal, as humiliation, though none of these are real. What is real is the fracture he has carried for years, unacknowledged, unhealed, waiting for the right mirror to awaken it. She was that mirror. And here lies the final tension: she does not rescue him. She does not soften to ease his shame. She does not sacrifice her wholeness to soothe his brokenness. She allows him to face himself, and that, for him, is unbearable. For her, it is liberation. Imagine the scene. A crowded room, conversations drifting like smoke, laughter scattered in waves. He stands there, speaking loudly, commanding attention, as if the sound of his voice could prove his worth. His smile is wide, his gestures sharp, but his eyes flicker, searching, always searching. And then, there she is. Not trying, not performing, not bending herself into the shape of his desire. She exists quietly, yet fully, as though the world does not need her noise to feel her presence. He notices, though he pretends not to. He throws glances laced with indifference, hoping she will chase them with hunger. But she does not move. He sharpens his charm, testing if his words can bend her silence. Still, nothing. She is not defiant, she is free. And that freedom burns him, for it mirrors the captivity of his own ego. Later, he tries a different tactic. He withdraws. Days pass without his call, without his attention. He believes she will break, that her need for his presence will outweigh her pride. But the opposite unfolds. She grows brighter in his absence, more alive, more radiant. She pours into her own world, into her passions, into herself. Instead of shrinking, she expands. This expansion terrifies him, because it confirms the truth he cannot face: she does not need him to exist. So he shifts again, this time toward criticism. He tells her she is too cold, too untouchable, too unwilling to love. He mocks her independence, accuses her of arrogance, all in hopes of bending her self-possession into apology. But she does not explain herself. She does not defend. She lets his words collapse under their own weight, like arrows shot into the wind. Her silence becomes her shield, her clarity her weapon. Every attempt he makes to control her becomes another mirror. His silence reveals his fear of abandonment. His withdrawal reveals his fear of dependence. His criticism reveals his fear of inadequacy. She does not need to argue to expose him, his actions confess more than his words ever could. He is not battling her, he is battling himself. And this is where the story turns tragic, yet necessary. He realizes too late that his ego has cost him the very connection he craved. In his attempt to protect his wound, he deepened it. In his attempt to dominate her, he lost her. And she does not rejoice in his pain, nor does she harden with bitterness. She simply walks, luminous and steady, carrying no need for revenge. Because her worth was never tied to his recognition. Her freedom was never his to grant or deny. In the echo of her absence, he hears the truth: she was never just a woman in his life. She was the mirror of his shadow, the figure that revealed what he refused to see. And in losing her, he has gained a chance, though he may never take it, to finally face himself. There comes a moment when the mirror must be turned away. For too long, her energy has reflected his wound, his fear, his endless hunger for validation. She has watched him wear his ego like armor, watched him project shadows that were never hers to carry, watched him mistake her silence for cruelty when it was only clarity. But the deeper truth calls her elsewhere. Individuation, Jung's word for the soul's journey into wholeness, does not happen when one remains trapped in another's storm. It happens when she reclaims her power from his fractured gaze and walks her own path without apology. For the archetypal woman, empowerment is not defiance. It is not rebellion for its own sake. It is the quiet yet devastating realization that she is not responsible for healing the wound behind his ego. His wound predates her. It belongs to his childhood, to his unmet needs, to the moments when he was unseen, unloved, unvalidated. She cannot mother that boy, nor can she rescue the man who cages himself in pride. To try would be to betray herself. And so, her empowerment begins the moment she releases him back to his shadows, choosing instead to dance in her own light. This shift is subtle but seismic. No longer does she interpret his silence as rejection, she interprets it as evidence of his incapacity. No longer does she shrink when he withdraws, she expands in the space he leaves behind. No longer does she ache to be understood by him, she understands herself, and that is enough. The power he once believed he had over her dissolves, because it was never truly his, it was the power she unknowingly handed him. Now, she takes it back, piece by piece, breath by breath. Empowerment in the feminine does not roar, it glows. It radiates through presence, through self-possession, through the refusal to compromise one's essence for the comfort of another's ego. She learns to embody what the Stoics knew, that external validation is fleeting, that freedom begins when one's worth is untethered from another's recognition. She becomes untouchable not because she builds walls, but because she no longer depends on fragile bridges. And in this individuation, something magical occurs. The very qualities that unsettled him, her silence, her independence, her refusal to be owned, now become her crown. What he saw as coldness is revealed as composure. What he mistook for arrogance is revealed as self-respect. What he tried to label as manipulation is revealed as wisdom. She has not changed, she has remembered who she was before his shadow fell across her. It is here that desire shifts polarity. He, who once dismissed her, feels his obsession grow sharper, more desperate. But now, she is no longer accessible in the same way. His wound may still burn, but she is no longer the salve. His ego may still hunger, but she is no longer the feast. She has stepped into the rarest form of attraction, the kind that does not seek to attract at all. She has become whole within herself, and wholeness cannot be possessed. This is the liberation Jung hinted at when he spoke of individuation, the freedom to no longer live as another's projection. For she is no longer the mirror of his wound. She is the woman who sees, who knows, who walks with silence not as submission, but as sovereignty. Her detachment is not absence, it is power reclaimed.